We're very accustomed to delivering projects to our customers, with some varying success. In this video, I would like to share with you some tools that can help us be a cohesive team that delivers satisfaction to its users. Typical methods used to initiate a project include a high-level discussion with some key stakeholders surrounding some idea to establish the needs, scope, budget, and success criteria. Notes are captured and may even be whiteboarded to some extent. That idea becomes a project that is later shared with a project team. The project team holds a meeting where they are given a solution approach document. No doubt, reading a solution approach enlightens the project team as to why they're doing what they're doing. The project team may now focus on the task at hand by creating their project plan and discuss relevant risks. Everyone walks away knowing exactly what to do next. Take this BA for example. They will start talking to several designated stakeholders to document the project's requirements. Because the solution approach was so clear, there will be no variation from that and what the users now tell them they need. With requirements in hand and quite well written into a functional specification template, there shall be no confusion in what the software will need to do. It's just missing one final touch: mockups. Indeed, the best person to design the software is the BA. After all, they did do all the talking with the users. Meanwhile, the project team patiently awaits the outcome of the functional specification to begin their work. The project team is now enlightened as to why they are doing what they're doing and how they will be doing it. Everyone agrees and understands their objectives completely, so therefore, all sign off on the requirements. Coding begins, and since the developer has no concerns whatsoever with the approach taken on each feature, they will finish ahead of schedule. At the weekly project team meeting, everyone is satisfied with the progress being made. The team remains focused and positive. And this well-informed QA was even able to complete their test design without pause. As Sprint 1 reaches code complete, the QA can begin their testing without obstacles. As a good faith effort, the BA conducts a demo with the stakeholders to reassure them that the project is delivering exactly what they asked for. And as you can see, they're quite impressed with the progress. Once the project team has finished the work for all the sprints, the stakeholders praise them for their efforts. So where did this project team go wrong? They took all the right steps to ensure that they were delivering their project by following the SDLC. Each person had a specific role and assignments, there was a functional spec that everyone agreed upon, they had regular checkpoints, and they began testing early. Project teams often get lost in the details and struggle to effectively string all the pieces together to create value. What they were missing was a shared understanding. Everyone thought they agreed on the success criteria of the project. Still, they each interpreted the delivery differently, and it resulted in opposition. Like the childhood game of telephone, information from the solution approach didn't translate well to the functional specification, which didn't translate well to development or testers, and ultimately didn't translate well for the users. The team members operated in silos and waited on others to finish their work. Like an assembly line. Assembly lines have their place, manufacturing hundreds or thousands of products in a routine fashion. Does that model sound like it fits well with our industry? Of course not. A team needs to understand their users and how they work today. They need to point out problems and possibilities, weigh in on the tough decisions, externalize their ideas using words and pictures. A team needs to discover and learn. A team needs to be flexible and creative. And a team needs to have a shared understanding of the solution they're building and build it together. So how do we build this shared understanding? The project team needs to tell their project's story. But how? A team needs to work in unison with each member as a contributor from start to finish. We need to transform our project meetings from routine status updates into productive collaboration. By utilizing a simple yet powerful tool, we can visually map out what our users must be able to do in our software. User story mapping is a brainstorming, elicitation, traceability, collaboration, and conversation tool all in one. It illustrates the big picture through the high-level abilities captured in the solution approach. It encompasses the characteristics of its users and considers their perspectives. It defines the acceptance criteria of the software. It reveals risks or impacts to other software functions and processes. It can be used to define sprints and work breakdown. It is a proof of concept tool. Imagine yourself along with your fellow project team members, drawing out these questions and ideas in a story map, aligning user roles with actions, asking more questions, sharing more ideas, posing problems or what-ifs, imagining possibilities, all while capturing it visually. User story mapping is easily understood by individuals outside of IT. Include your stakeholders in the conversation. What's the best way to differentiate scope creep from new understanding? By discovering the full breadth and depth of the story. The user story map depicts a linear roadmap of the software's features from the user's perspective. It is made up of activities or features which define what a user will be able to do at a high level. Most importantly, the user story map contains user stories which define the general steps a user must take to achieve success. A user story is as its name identifies it. It tells a story of a user, what they need to accomplish, and why. User stories often follow the who, what, why model. For example, as an underwriter, I need a data entry screen so that I can enter a new policy application. You might be thinking, well, that's too broad. What about the information the underwriter needs? Or what kind of policy is it? Or how does the application get submitted to the underwriter in the first place? Excellent. That is exactly the level of thinking this tool is designed to trigger. User stories may need to decompose into smaller stories to make them more understandable. If a user story is too large or elaborate, or crosses multiple software features, then it's probably time to decompose it. Start with the epics, break those into activities, break those down into stories, and break the stories down into variations. The focus should be kept on providing value. Ask questions like, what are some alternatives? What would make it cool? Or, what could go wrong? Acceptance criteria are necessary to validate whether the solution meets the needs of the user. This is where teams take deep dives and agree on confirmation of what is to be built. They define the requirements, outcomes, or conditions that must be met, such as what information must be provided, what operations must be performed, what performance and responsiveness is necessary, what level of security is necessary. They can be written as statements or even questions. For example, what if the user's device loses power while they're entering info? Be sure to separate the edge cases from the typical activities or acceptance criteria, but don't exclude them. The delighters are the cool features that go above and beyond to please the users. Again, keep them separate, but don't exclude them. Illustrate your user story through low-fidelity mockups, process models, or input-output table. This will help others visualize the outcome. They also offer the project team something to discuss and ensure the user satisfaction will remain high. Finding a software solution that is valuable, feasible, and usable requires the input and effort from more than one individual. It's not just up to the BA or architect to write the user stories. Prioritize the user stories according to specific business goals. Ask what target user's goal is most important, rather than what feature is most important. User stories enable the project team to stay lean and keep focused on what is necessary. Functional specifications almost never tell the whole story of who the feature is being built for and why. A functional specification is typically created from only one perspective because it is typically written by only one author. The author's mind is capable of filling in the details that aren't written down, which can prevent them from detecting what could be missing from the document. 10 project team members can interpret a functional specifications 10 ways, and all still sign off, believing they are in agreement. What happens to our functional specification? With user stories, a document or other organizational tool may still be necessary for high-level analysis, or to capture the overarching business rules, definitions, constraints, and assumptions. Remember, the software you're building isn't for you, it's for your users. Understanding your users, how they meet their needs today without your software, and how the world will change with your software is crucial to assuring their happiness with your product. Invest time empathizing with them and researching their habits. Develop the user story map from their perspective and build just enough software to prototype and let your users evaluate it. And do this often. Learn from what they tell you, and don't be offended by it. Here's some things to avoid when you're doing your user story mapping. Avoid working on the story map alone. That never results in a shared understanding. Avoid excluding project team members. However, avoid working as a crowd. Avoid focusing only on the acceptance criteria and not telling the story. Avoid overdoing the map. Only map what you need to tell the story. Avoid reverting back to the old way of doing things. Avoid making user story mapping just another part of your existing documentation regimen. And avoid mapping when there's no story altogether. Project teams often make incorrect assumptions about what the project must do and quickly dismiss things they think it should not. User story mapping allows the project team to hone in on what is required to deliver satisfaction to their users. Only when you see the big picture will you be able to distinguish what is scope creep from what is simply just new understanding. After all, a team cannot think of everything.